What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, unfortunately, is a sad day. We lost a big creative voice in pop culture, in anime, and manga, and that is Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, a series that I have been following and enjoying for 25 years. It's kind of a shock. I didn't realize exactly how old Mr. Toriyama was. He was 68 years old and passed away actually last Friday, March 1st. We heard about it this Friday, March 8th. So kind of a stunner. Wasn't really expecting to hear that. Didn't know that he was not well. And it's sad news. It's sad news because, like I said, he's a big creative voice in pop culture, but really specifically in anime. And I think that he's probably going to be most remembered for is creating an anime that was incredibly palatable for Western audiences. It was an anime that you could understand, you can get into. To again give you a little bit of a background, so the year was 1999 when I first heard about this thing called Dragon Ball Z. I didn't know what it was. I just knew Dragon Ball. And at the time, the internet was in its infancy, and I was picking up bits and pieces on Toonami, Cartoon Network, and heard people talking about it at work. It was just sort of this weird thing because if you don't know anything about Dragon Ball, there's the main storyline that is the anime, that is the series, you know, and it runs for so many episodes. But the movies themselves that are actually taking place at the same time that the show is going on, it's continuing, is separate, and they're not really the same continuity. They exist outside of the series itself. So what happened is that I would see episodes and then I would watch a movie not knowing the difference between the two. So it's really kind of confusing. But it was easy to sort of understand. Now, if you back up the clock a little more, you go to the mid 1990s, and that was when I was really, into not just Street Fighter, but the Marvel vs. Capcom series, and that was when they were really, as far as the games were concerned, the arcade games, they were really getting elaborate with like their beams, like their unibeams and their Hadoukens, and all these things were really amped up. And so I think it was that sort of simple concept of characters fighting and using their powers or martial arts or whatever that kind of I was able to sort of identify that. I liked that in the games, and they're doing this on the show. That's all I really knew. And so there was several years of just sort of discovery. And if you're familiar with the series, when they were bringing it over to the U.S., there was different dubs, there was different companies. Pioneer was in charge of it at one point. Funimation came in. There was different characters doing the voices, and so it was really confusing. They started the series and they started over. There were some edits, there were some changes, and they went back to more of a faithful representation of the show. And in the years since then, they've had the correct aspect ratio, 4:3, something in the arcades we really know and respect as the proper aspect ratio for some of these games. Then they were switched to 16:9 and back and forth and all that. But once you sort of were able to kind of catch up and make sense of this, like I said, it took years because, like I said, the internet was in its infancy. You couldn't just go to Walmart or Best Buy and buy a box set and get all caught up. It just didn't work that way. Even though Dragon Ball Z, which was a series that I was really interested in, ended, I think, in 94, 95, and the Dragon Ball GT, which was a separate thing, started in 97. The show that I was really concerned about, really wanted to get into, was done as far as Japan was concerned, but it was really kind of coming over in different waves and different versions, and it really wasn't organized yet. So it took several years to kind of get caught up. But for those of you that enjoy the series, enjoy the show, the characters are great. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in the show, but Akira Toriyama was able to write the story and create these characters that were sort of based in our reality, easy to understand. You identified with the human characters, and then you had all this sort of weird, crazy aliens. And the powers that these characters had, it's sort of, I was able to pick up on it, and it made sense. I think a lot of people saw this going on, and it made sense to them too. It was basically these aliens that looked like humans that were maximizing their potential, pushing themselves beyond their limits. And if you're into physical fitness or martial arts or what have you, you can identify that identify with that. And it's something that you really kind of you identify with. You fell in love with these characters. You wanted to see them push beyond, to take on an evil, to beat up the bad guy, to win the day, to seize the day. And those themes are universal. And so it was immediately something that I picked up on. I enjoyed. I loved cartoons, anime growing up, also martial arts as well. So this was just like a culmination of so many different things that I was just really into. But the saga that I started watching, I was able to actually watch from beginning to end as it was airing in the US, was the Android saga, which is the middle chunk of Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is split up into three main sort of sagas. And that sticks in my mind so much because it was such a great story as far as not really knowing where it was going, but being totally invested in that story. And that just goes down to great writing, great characters, great character development, utilizing some stuff there. The Superman story is definitely in there. You find out that the main character, Goku, is actually an alien from another planet, and that's why that explains some of his powers. But it was so interesting to watch this story sort of weave its way, through my fascination. It's like I just really was just interested in this and didn't know where it was going. It was a saga that was going on. There was over 190 episodes, I believe. But it was just so much fun to just sort of watch and not really know what was going to happen. But not also, I never felt cheated by some of the things that they did in the show, to where I was like, oh, that seems cheap. I mean, it was just a great thing to sort of watch and see just sort of happen. And the elaborate way things happened, the twists and turns, was really just someone who had, I think, a limitless imagination. That's exactly who Akira Toriyama was. He had a very, very unique art style, and he was very imaginative. It's actually sort of funny that some of the stories that you hear about him was that he was writing these shows, and then something would happen. There'd be like a new Super Saiyan form, and then so many years would go by, and he would just sort of forgot about that. Like his mind was always just working, always just being creative, always just coming up with new and different things. And I think he was just constantly working so much that maybe he just forgot some of the things that he did before. And so going back and reminding himself, oh yeah, that's right, that's what I did. And that's just a busy mind that's going to just, it could be chaotic, but it turned out to be just beautiful. It turned out to be artistic. Some of the flair, the style that he had. He also designed the characters in the Dragon Quest video games, and his art style was just great. It was awesome to look at those characters and see the characters in Dragon Ball and see them sort of inspire each other, I guess, in different ways. And it was just something I just really, really enjoyed. Backing up the clock again, remember that was 1999 when I first started doing this. Young father, I had one son at the time, newly married, and then as I grew and as my family grew, we would watch Dragon Ball Z, and we would watch the movies, because the movies were also sort of, like I said, they were running kind of in parallel, separate. They weren't really canon, but they were separate, and it was a unique, almost like an Elseworld story. And then we would watch the new edits and all this, and then it was just something that I could share with my oldest son and my second son and my youngest son. And not only were we catching up on Dragon Ball Z and seeing where that would go, but the video games were coming out, and that was just another great way to kind of share these characters and this story with my kids. And so this was the PS2 era when they started coming out with the Dragon Ball Budokai, the first game. And then they continued on into many, many different games. My kids talk about the Budokai Tenkaichi games, which is another series of Dragon Ball games. And they just absolutely love those games. And they talk about them all the time. As far as my career on YouTube is concerned, my very first videos, if you go to my channel, go all the way back to the very beginning. Those videos are kind of rough. But I was making Dragon Ball lamps. I was making these LED lamps, these globes, and I had Dragon Ball characters, and I did some woodworking, and that's where my YouTube career started, really, long time ago. I've always enjoyed this, and it makes it so much sweeter when you can enjoy this and share this with your family. I've met a lot of different people that also enjoy Dragon Ball and Akira Toriyama's other works in YouTube and other spaces, and had lifelong friends, based on that, and it's one of the things that we have in common, one of the things that we really enjoy. My brother is really into it as well. We have this meme, we have this relationship where he finds himself to be more of a Vegeta and I'm more of a Goku. And we always share those memes back and forth. It's a way of just communicating. It's a way of identifying, feelings that we have. So it's very much been a part of my life since 1999. It's pop culture. It's not, maybe it's not the most important thing in the world, but it is another way that I could share something with the people that I love and my friends. And it's been such a wild, weird series to see continue on beyond the Dragon Ball Z, the Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Super, and the new movies that come out. Of course, the games have continued also. The movie Dragon Ball Super Broly is one of the greatest animated movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's epic. It's beautiful. And we have Akira Toriyama to thank for this. There are people that I wish, and it's a very small group. I don't really get starstruck. I'm not really into all of celebrities, but there are some real creative people that I would have loved to spend some time with, to sit down and have a drink and just pick their brain and talk to them if I would have ever had the privilege, which I know it probably would have never happened. But there's a very select few number of people creative people that I would have loved to talk to about their creations. Number one would be George Lucas and Star Wars and his creation, and to talk about that and to be able to sit with him for a few hours and have a drink and just discuss where his mind was at and where it's gone and how does he feel about all that and his process. That would just be an incredible conversation to have. Number two would be Sylvester Stallone and the character of Rocky and the entire series of movies and how that sort of paralleled his life and the losses that he's had with his son, and just all of that would be just incredible. A great conversation to have. A very creative person. And then number three would have been Mr. Akira Toriyama and his crazy imagination. What he had to have been thinking of. What inspired this? What inspired that? How did you come up with this? And to just have that conversation would have been absolutely incredible. Now, I probably would have never gotten that opportunity, and now, unfortunately, it is, it's definitely never going to happen. But I wanted to just take a second and just thank him for that imagination. I'm grateful to the people that have produced his work, that have, dubbed his work so that we could hear it and understand it, and imported it to this country so that we can enjoy it. And I hope that spirit of joy and imagination, that little spark that he had, continues on, not just in the shows, but in the other people that have watched his shows, watched his movies, enjoyed his art, and been inspired by it to then move on and create other things. We've seen many different videos and shorts and series on YouTube inspired by what he did with those characters and how he created those characters. And all these individuals on YouTube and different forms and different media, taking those characters and moving forward and just experimenting and seeing where that would have gone. There was a time where I even wrote a short story on some forum somewhere years and years ago. It really is a shame that we lost another big creative voice, a creative mind, and he will absolutely be missed. So for the last time, it's a shame that I had to wait until you've passed. But Mr. Toriyama, thank you.